I want to introduce the panel. Starting on my left, Adam Messenger, CTO of Twitter. He is responsible for long-term technology direction and architecture for Twitter, as well as prior to Twitter, he was at Oracle. So please welcome Adam Messenger. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
A man whose name I bastardized earlier, and I apologize, Stan Stanatham? Stanatham.
You got it wrong again.
I'm convinced when I
Third
get drinks,
time you might be lucky.
when I get drinks later on, I'm going to do much better
I
at
think
this.
you need a few drinks to get my name right, so don't worry.
Stan is Senior Vice President of Consumer and Market Insights at Unilever. And previous to that, he spent a number of years, I think it was 17 you said earlier today, as VP of Marketing and Strategy Insights at Coca-Cola. So please welcome Stan. And last but not least, we have Shiv Singh, SVP of Global Brand and Marketing Transformation for Visa, also author of Social Media Marketing for Dummies. I never knew that there were authors of those books. I just thought they just showed up on shelves.
It doesn't take much.
And also previous to that, he was Global Head of Digital with PepsiCo, and in 2009 was awarded the Media Maven Award, and previously with Razorfish as well. So please welcome Shiv. As I said earlier today, the point of this today is really to share and have interactive sessions with everybody. So feel free to, hopefully, if we can get some of the mics ready, so we can ask some questions on the floor, because I do want to make sure that we can ask questions during the sessions. If you have something, please raise a hand, and we can go from there. So I wanted to start the question, well, let's start out down on your side, Shiv. You've been with, in the digital marketing space for a very long period of time. Made a big transition to Visa and going through that effort. So what are some of the things, and you walk away and you look at 2013 that either surprised you or walked away with big lessons in social for 2013?
Let's say for me, the biggest lesson or takeaway is, and quite frankly, it may be a frustration, is that we as an industry, haven't really normalized around metrics. And we haven't really been able to, I think, as successfully and as rigorously across the board tie them to our broader business KPIs. And I'd say, tragically, we as the social industry hasn't, I'd say, matured to a point where it's stabilized as much as we'd like it to be. We have different ad formats, algorithm changes, all kinds of stuff that happens that certainly on the brand side, makes our lives more difficult and makes the marketer look less credible to his peers in the organization. So I don't know if you were expecting such a Debbie Downer response to kick off the panel.
It wasn't what I was hoping for, but it's good. Because Brian referenced something similar earlier about measurement and demonstrating for ROI's purposes. I think the data was really, it sort of touched on what parts of the elements of what you're touching on. Where do you see you helping to solve that problem? Let me push it back to you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's for better or worse, and with all due humility and respect, I think it's actually left more and more for the brands to drive and force that and really make it happen for their businesses. What we do know is that, with the large social platforms, the metrics they use evolve and change. We hear about things retroactively in some cases. We know our businesses are complex. In fairness to the platforms and the agencies, we aren't always opening up data that we need to. We have to double down and really invest to make sure that we are establishing those links or refuse to spend. I think it's time for us to all be serious.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
I think,
so the pressure's on us, I'd say.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Not me, you. But I agree. I mean, I think it's interesting to note that we're talking about how much social has an impact, and we're talking about shifts that Bob's mentioned and everything else. But at the end of the day, what are the common set of metrics that a new CMO can measure himself by, or somebody who's in charge of digital that can benchmark themselves against the whole entire industry at that point? And we are lacking that. That's noticeable. Stan, you've been, Coca-Cola, you've transitioned to Unilever over the last 6 months.
Yep.
So you've seen two large enterprise organizations, touching on 2013, and hopefully, you have some additional insight that maybe not.
Sure. I think if I have to use 3 words to characterize 2013, I would use the words experimentation, choicefulness, and I forgot the third one. I had a yeah, but I think let's stick with these two. Yeah, experimentation and choicefulness. The reason why I'm saying these two are quite critical is because this is a world where things are changing incredibly rapidly. So if you don't take risk and if you don't do small experiments and learn from that, you would be trying to get an ideal solution built, and an ideal solution doesn't exist. So you have to go for the 80% solution. And in the process of creating those 80% solutions, in both the companies that I've been associated in 2013, we've learned hell of a lot. And I think that's going to be incredibly useful in 2014 as we accelerate this whole social intelligence journey at Unilever. It's going to be really useful. And choicefulness is very critical because on an average, every week you get at least one call from somebody saying that, look, I've got this great new technology in this space, whether it is listening or whether it is analytics, and everyone's presentation looks amazingly interesting. Yeah. Now, how do you actually make out the difference between a fly-by-night operator versus somebody who's really robust and good? And you can easily say, okay, this is a small person I don't want to deal with. But then in this space, sometimes a small person might have a really good technology. So the question is, how do you become choiceful and focus on the ones that matter? And I don't know how to focus on the ones that matter. That's a big challenge. That's
fair. That is a challenge. And there are, you can uncover any rock, and there's always a new technology or some angle on it.
There is somebody who's got some new angle on it. And as Bob was talking about earlier in the day, you're talking about big data, and that is the buzzword that wherever you go to, everybody talks about big data. And when I hear that so often, the first thing that comes to my mind is, it's almost like teen sex. Everybody talks about it. Everybody thinks the other person is doing it a lot. Everybody thinks the other person knows how to do it, but nobody's doing it right.
I'm not going to say I understand what you mean, but I get it. That's fair.
Okay, I got some reaction out of you now.
Well, good.
I'm so glad you're on the panel. I was so boring. It's so much better.
It's an interesting use of the word choiceful. We'll just call it that. So Adam, you're on a completely different side of the fence. You've had Twitter, huge year, big changes for your organization. How has that affected what you deliver every day as a product and service? When you take a look at that organization transformation, you're in one form or another almost one of the OSs of social, one might consider it. Sure. How did that affect your organization in terms of, you're the CTO, you've got to get stuff done every day?
Yeah, I think we've managed that transition, the actual going public process pretty well. I've been proud of both the engineers and of the whole company. Hats off to Mike, our CFO, who ran pretty much an immaculate process. And his orders were to have a really vanilla, low drama process, and I think we achieved that. And I think that Twitter has it's a pretty mature company inside by now, and it hasn't remarkably changed that much day to day. If anything, it's given us a little bit more focus on a few things we know we're going to be measured on. But overall, it hasn't changed that much how we work day to day. A lot of days I forget to check the stock price. I had promised myself I would do it once a day and no more than once a day. And a lot of days I forget, so I think that's a good sign.
That's a great sign.
Just kidding.
Good, that's great. That's a hard transition for a lot of companies to make.
I think we're still focused. Twitter is a lot of different. It's a hard product to define because it's a lot of different things to different people. And to folks in this room, it's really different than to a teenager in high school. The way you think about Twitter and the way you look at Twitter. But we always try to look at it first from the perspective of our users, and then the marketing products are layered on top of that. And I think it's part of why first the earned media products for using Twitter for earned media has worked well, and then later the paid media has worked well. Is because first and foremost, it's we try to make it for our users, and a lot of them are the skew's young, actually skew's somewhat female, and it's pretty worldwide distribution, and they use it basically. Even though there are all these different ways people use Twitter, there's sort of at root 3 use cases, and they are kind of to satisfy some curiosity, to learn about what's going on in the world, to have a feeling of connection with other people, to feel like you're not alone in the world, and to be able to sort of have your voice heard. And that's sort of, when we think about what our users are trying to get done, it's more or less those 3 use cases. And so we're, the reason I think, part of the reason life hasn't changed very much is because that's pretty clear to us. That's what Twitter is about, and we try to make it better for those 3 use cases. And that's sort of, so given that we kind of know what we want to get done, right. These other things are interesting events. But Twitter's had a lot of interesting history, right? Some of which was far more dramatic than this year.
Yeah, that's true. Keeping on course and keeping the vision just keeps it on steady course in terms of delivering value to your end users.
Yeah.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So let's look at 2014. Let's push forward and take a look. We'll give you an opportunity, Shiv, to maybe give us a little bit more rosy look ahead, or maybe not. So when you look at 2014 and you start thinking about what's my core focus? What am I going to improve? What are the things I'm going to leverage social for in the year ahead? For Visa, what are the things that are kind of on your mission statement if you were to put a couple bullet points down and speak to your board or discuss it?
So I'd like to use a metaphor of teens. No, I think in all seriousness, so what excites me about 2014 and the whole social ecosystem is the fact that I think it's going to be the death of the social ecosystem, because it's truly going to become business as usual. At least that's my hunch. It'll happen more towards the latter half of the year, but we're going to stop looking at it through the lens of, glitz and, throwing rose petals at it or whatever. And that's going to be integrated into the normal part of how we do business and what we do. The second piece to that, which I think is also really critically important, is, it's already started happening, is that it stopped being thought of as a silo within digital. It's the glue that underpins everything digital, and that's a great thing. And what's also going to happen more and more is it's going to be even more forcefully a glue that underpins and is a part of a lot of marketing everywhere. So I feel very excited about that. We saw signs of that last year during the last year's Super Bowl, when I think it was 36 of the 52 advertisers so were using hashtags, and there was as much investment being put on the online strategies as the TV ones. But I think in marketing it's going to be a lot more integrated. So I'm really excited about it from that perspective. Yeah.
How does the structure of your organization, how do you embed social across the enterprise, or is it still in a silo itself structurally?
Well, I mean, I think I'd say it isn't, and this is credit to our chief brand officer. I mean, in hiring someone like me, I grew up in digital. My last role was running digital marketing at PepsiCo. But to bring me in and be accountable for driving the Visa brand forward, which means brand strategy, brand management, card design, innovation. And then the fourth team is the digital team that rolls up into me. By virtue of that, it's not a silo. It's part of this one group. And I make sure that we look at digital as a cornerstone piece of our core marketing efforts. So I think credit to them. It's their vision that they saw that's the easiest way to solve for this.
That's great.
Yeah.
Stan, so you've been in 2 places, obviously, Coca-Cola and Unilever at enterprise level. But what are the structures? Is there a big difference in the structures, the way that social is embedded in those?
No, social is embedded. It's getting embedded more and more into marketing, as opposed to being a standalone function. I think the lines between digital marketing, traditional marketing, media, and insights, all that is getting blurred very rapidly. And that's going to accelerate. And that's going to create a new normal, and people have to become more and more comfortable. That's one dimension that's going to change pretty significantly in 2014, as I see. The second big change is, I think I agree with Shiv that people are going to be talking less and less about social marketing and social intelligence, but they're going to be talking more about marketing and intelligence and insights. If you go back to 70s and 80s, you had a bunch of companies who embraced computers versus a bunch of companies who did not embrace computers. Today, nobody talks about it. It's just the way of doing life. Now, today we are at that juncture. There are a bunch of companies who embrace social marketing. There are some who don't embrace social marketing. And I think the group of companies who are not embracing social marketing is going to shrink very rapidly in 2014. And probably from 2015 onwards, you would see one way of marketing, and which is a screen back marketing, and whatever that screen is, whether it is a mobile or a television or a computer, people will think screen back marketing as opposed to a TV centric marketing.
Are your companies ready for that? I mean, it's like, what's interesting is we talk about structure, but is the staff able to support that and exploit it?
I think so. I think, if you look at, I'll give you one of the best examples in, social marketing is Dove Real Beauty Sketches. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you have such a big success under your belt, it energizes the company to really rally around the magic of social marketing. Yeah. When I last checked, there were close to 200 million views on Dove Real Beauty Sketches. 200 million. By far the most viewed branded content on YouTube. Yeah. Now, when that happens, people are going to turn around and say, think about it. If you put a $5 million or $4 million advertising on Super Bowl, along with however many ads that come, 50 plus ads that come, what are the odds that your ad is going to be seen by that many number of people that we could actually see? And these are people who are making a conscious choice to see it, as opposed to, just sitting there in front of an idiot box and that thing comes and goes. Yeah. Here they're sitting and clicking, saying, I want to see the ad. So when that was one big success. Yeah. Then we've had a couple of big successes in 2013 as a company. When that happens, people get energized. Then the belief sets in. And once the belief sets in, then the transformation happens. So that's the stage. First is, your experimentation, success, belief, and then scaling up.
Right.
And then we are in the journey where the belief is already there, and I can almost see a big scaling up happening in 2014.
Once you see the proof, it's hard to argue with it.
Exactly, you can't argue with it.
Yep.
200 million is a number that you cannot argue with.
Yep.
You cannot argue with.
Yeah, it's amazing to see when you really look at the length of that spot and think about 200 million people engaging. I think it's a 4-minute.
It's a 4-minute, yeah.
And think about they're going there voluntarily and they're engaging with this and they're engaging with your brand. And then all you're doing with the idiot box per se is reminding them of the power of that. They get every emotion through that 4-minute video that they saw in a quick 30-second spot, which carries over. Which
and
is
at
great.
the end of the day, brand building is all about connecting with consumers at an emotional level. If you are just going to be talking about price and available now, call now, buy one get one free, you don't build a brand. You just build a commodity based on price. The other big success that we had in 2013 was another one for Lifebuoy. Yeah, it's not a brand that is available here in the US, but it is a fairly big brand in a lot of developing countries. And if you go and watch that YouTube film, I can promise that if you don't get tears in your eyes, you give me a call. I'll buy you a beer. Yeah? It's an incredible piece of communication. Now try doing that in a 30-second TV spot. There is no way you can do that. Yeah? Can we buy a 4-minute TV spot? I suppose we can, but will somebody sit and watch a 4-minute TV spot in the middle of the content they are consuming? No. But this one, there's some 60-odd million people have watched that YouTube video in developing countries where internet penetration is low. And it is making a huge statement about the company and the brand.
That's great.
Now, when those two kind of big examples hit the bullseye, then belief comes in. And then people are sitting and talking about how do I do digital-centric marketing program with TV as a component. Yeah? And that's a different way of thinking. Instead of saying, let me start with TV and how can I bolt on a digital component to it.
Right. It's just another medium as opposed to necessarily.
It's not, it's a,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, hopefully we'll end the question of the ROI question, which would be a good
Yeah.
thing, which it sounds like you're both referencing in some form or another.
Yep.
So we'll change speeds here a little bit. We'll talk about Twitter and where you're going in 2014, what you're thinking as an organization. You're providing this room of digital and social media specialists the abilities to do potentially that they don't have today in 2014.
Sure. So, like I said, we start with the consumer use cases, like I mentioned in the last answer. And on top of that, we layer on marketing use cases. And I think you've seen we've had a ton of launches in that space recently with new targeting options and the MoPub acquisition we recently did. And there we're also extending the idea of a native ad unit, that is an ad unit. In Twitter, the native ad unit are tweets and users you can follow. And they're just exactly the same as the organic content. And through MoPub, we're doing that with other applications now, Tango being the first of our partners there. So I think we like that concept. So I think you'll see we have high hopes for that product line. And then also I think it's pretty well known that we last year acquired a company called Bluefin, which helps us tie social spend with television spend. And I think we've seen good amplification effects from that. You'll see more along those lines, although I'm not quite ready to talk about what those look like.
Okay. Understood. Good. But some positive changes, some growth, and some opportunities to really further link maybe the media spend to social as well as new advertising opportunities on the platform.
Yeah. I think a bunch of new targeting opportunities. And I'd love to hear from folks in the sort of maybe when we get to a Q&A section, like what folks would like to have. I don't know. This is kind of customer research for me.
The line will form right
so,
here. And you're going to have to pay me to get that question answered.
We'd love to. I'm all ears. So let us know what you'd like.
That's great. We'll make sure we reserve an hour and a half for that at the end of the day. Maybe after drinks. That'll make it more entertaining. Okay. So let's talk a little bit. One of the things that I think Penny brought up, which was great, was influencer marketing. We're sitting here talking about campaigns that are great and the impact that they can have from a brand perspective. But with the insights of being able to get at some of the data and some of the context and depth of the social engagement, and certainly Bob referenced this earlier today talking about influencer marketing. Where does Visa take a look at? You've got an interesting customer base. You've got a brand, and then you've got banks, and then you've got this whole different spectrum of the concept of customers. Do you look at influencer marketing, and how do you think you might exploit it, or how have you done so far already?
Yeah. No, it's really interesting and fascinating, because just to explain a little bit of what Kurt was referring to is our core clients are the banks. We issue cards through them, and we strike these massive deals with the banks, like 5-10 year type deals, and then a certain percentage of their portfolio they issue through Visa. Anytime a consumer uses their Visa card, we make a very tiny slice of that. Separate to that, we also do a huge amount of consumer marketing so that there's acceptance and people choose to pull out their Visa card versus another card or versus cash. In a lot of markets around the world, the marketing we do is actually to get people to move away from cash and use a card. As long as they start using a card, we know we'll get the majority of the share, and it actually fuels our business. So it's called our four-party model, and along the way we need to keep the merchants happy, the acquirers happy. It's a lot of different people. The reason why I bring this up and explain it is, so we operate in 200 countries. There's something like, I think, 2.3 billion cards out there in the ecosystem. Something like, I think it's $7 trillion worth of transaction that goes through our network. We believe, especially in emerging markets, there's probably another 30 to 50% of the population that can be brought into the formal financial system. And so there's huge potential for us. The challenge is not in my lifetime, and nor in my kids' or my grandkids' lifetime, will Visa have enough marketing budget to tell that story and meet the needs of all, and to reach all the kind of consumers that we want to reach around the world. As a result, we have to depend very aggressively on influencer marketing of different kinds, online, offline, you name it. What we are finding, though, is that there are all kinds of influencers. Because the big challenge is, I mean, we were all talking influencer marketing even 5-7 years ago in the digital ecosystem, you know, and there are books out on the subject. Everyone's doing it. But if you think about it, if you're an influencer and one morning someone's trying to form a relationship with you from Visa, in the afternoon from another credit card company, in the evening from a bank, and while you're sleeping at night, I don't know, it's a payment startup that's trying to reach out to you, you're going to go pretty crazy pretty quickly. I mean, it's happened. It happens to people. Therefore, I think the influence marketing space, we do a fair bit in it, but I think it's due for a major sophistication upgrade where, you know, it was really, and what I mean by that is perfect example, and this is true, it just happened yesterday, it's quite funny. Yesterday morning, I tweeted there's this wonderful Dell ad that came out, you know, which is brand stories, and it was on YouTube doing really well. I thought it was a great piece of film. In the afternoon, Michael Dell, or somebody from his handle, and I just said, awesome Dell ad, great narrative, you know, it's honest, it's authentic. In the afternoon, Michael Dell's Twitter handle tweeted to me saying, hey, thank you, glad you really loved, you know, that film, watch for more, blah, blah. What he didn't know, or his team didn't know, is I'm a diehard Apple fan. Like, you know, it's like I'll give you my firstborn, just don't take away my, you know, my iPad away from me. But he didn't know that. It was totally wasted on me. We're still at that basic stage where we're not differentiating there. Had his guys been doing their homework, they'd have seen that in the last 6 months. I'd done the occasional Apple tweet or something, and they wouldn't have wasted their time. So I think there's a lot more to do. We ourselves are doing all the basics. We have to do a lot more because our budgets aren't going to be there to allow for that. And I think the fun is just starting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to take a look at, in that circumstance, the definition of a community and who are the important people in that community, and do they pay attention to you? If you tweet that, does that matter? Are they fighting uphill? Are you a negative influencer at a certain point?
And what they don't realize is that the person to really talk to is my wife. I mean, she's the true decision maker end to end.
Stan?
I look at influencer model a little bit differently. From a B2C kind of perspective. If there is a negative news around your brand that is being spread around, then it is quite easy to identify that 15, 20 people who are the main reason for dissemination of negative news. Then you can actually go and engage with them on a one-on-one conversation and find out what is driving them to do that. Under that situation, negative influencing can be neutralized a little bit. But if you have to do mass positive communication about your brand, yes, you can identify a bunch of influencers, but I also strongly believe that if you have very strong content, the content will create a bunch of influencers who no algorithm will find out. And I'll give you a simple example. I talked about Dove Real Beauty sketches, right? The version that was produced was targeted at women. Yeah, it's all about self-esteem of women. So the forensic artist brings in, a woman is brought in, she's behind the screen, she describes herself, and then, he sketches her. And then he brings another person who describes that same lady whose sketch he has drawn, and he sketches that person again. The second sketch is usually much better looking than the first sketch, because women don't necessarily say too many nice things about themselves. They are a little bit critical of themselves, whereas their friends actually say a lot of nice things. Now, the reason why I'm narrating this story is because there was a spoof that was done, a male spoof that was done, which is about, bring a guy, he describes himself. The picture almost looks like, Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt, and then they get his friend to come and describe the same guy, and he's got buck tooth and, big paunch and so on and so forth. Now, you can sit here and argue whether it is good for the brand, but if the brand is all about authenticity and it's all about real beauty, you can the fact is that female version of the Dove Real Beauty sketches inspired somebody to actually produce really great content. Yeah, if you look at the male version of the Real Beauty sketches, not produced by Unilever, but produced by some amateur, but outstanding quality, looks as good as the other one. Yeah, and that also went viral. Now people look at it, have a good laugh. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a company like Unilever would have actually, if something like this had happened, they would have probably sent a legal notice to the guy saying that how dare you actually infringe upon our brand. But today the company is very comfortable, they accept it and they say, okay, let's move on. But the guy who produced it, in our opinion, he's actually a pretty strong influencer. Yeah. Now, could you have found out that through the 3 dimensions that Peggy was talking about? You couldn't have found out. But he produced the content and then he became an influencer. So there are different variations to influencer. And to Bob's point, I think content is king. Content is king. If you produce a really emotionally engaging content, it creates a bunch of influencers.
Yeah, that's fair to say. So, Adam, I don't think I have much of a question for you on influencer marketing, except for the fact that we do leverage, obviously, Twitter's a great data source to get at that insight, that connectivity. Where do you see any of the connectivity between customers changing at all on Twitter? Do you see that dynamic's going to be more intimate, or do you think it just, because there is a lot of noise out there now, and then the question is, when you look at the future, even of social, but certainly on Twitter, you get that signal noise issue, and the question at certain points are you losing the personalization element of it is it selling itself to the media in some form or another so that people just almost have to tune out?
Yeah.
Which I think somebody made a great point of earlier. I think it was Brian, just talking about the signal and the noise and how much stuff you throw at people before they tune out. How does Twitter take a look at that?
Yeah. So internally, we have for our users models on what they're interested in and what they're known for, topic models, and we label tweets with topics, and we sort of have an idea of like what topics people are talking about. And we can look at your network and have an idea about what your network is interested in. It's an active area of research for us, what sort of constitutes how to measure content quality. It's a tricky question, actually. Like, what is content quality? Has the average quality of content on Twitter increased or decreased? I don't know that we have a great sort of theoretical understanding of what that means. It's one of our research programs actually is around that, to try to understand what that exactly what it's you can say that question in English and it parses, it makes perfect sense, right? And then you have to sort of describe it in math, and it's actually unclear what the definition is, because when different people say that, they mean very different things. And so both from the network quality, like, does this person have a high quality network or not? And does this person see high quality content or not? And is the content in this market high quality or not? Or those kinds of questions. We don't actually have a very rigorous model around a mathematical model. We have some, we have prototypes, we have some ideas about, like, it's not like we're entirely blind, but I wouldn't say that our understanding here is super strong. And it's, like I said, it's an active area of academic research for us. Yeah, if you know of academics who are pursuing this, with all seriousness, I think we're very interested in collaborating on this topic, because it's a really interesting problem, and one that we
I think brands suffer from it as well. I mean, in terms of content development, what's on target, how much is too much, what defines quality, and all of those engagement opportunities. I think we all struggle with that. Content can be king, but it's only king when it's good. If it's bad, it's not the king. And you want to make sure that you protect your brand as best as possible with the best content you can possibly deliver.
One thing we have found, and I think it's related to the sort of influencer marketing in some way, it's the same intuition drives both of them, is it's far easier to analyze users than it is to analyze particular snippets of content, especially on Twitter, where the content is fairly brief, right? So I think it's far easier to determine if a user produces high quality content. This is like a high quality user than it is to say this tweet is high quality. That I can say with high confidence is true. Other than that, it's like it's an open area of research. Yeah.
Well, it'll be fun to see what happens.